Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Freelance to Me podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Cisneros Mejia, and today I'm so excited to feature another fantastic freelance writer. Always a treat to meet another writer, the wonderful Jessica Walrack. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I love being able to chat with people who take freelance and apply it to, whatever their gift is, whether it's art or design or programming or web development. But it's always a special treat to get to talk to another writer specifically because that's my flavor of freelance and entrepreneurship. So I'm super excited to get to chat with you today because I feel like you know my world and I know your world.
Exactly. It's always nice to talk to another writer because we spend so much of our days in this business, and people who aren't doing it just don't understand on the same level.
I think so. I think especially when you see everything that's happened with ChatGPT or all the conversation about it, I'm sure we'll dig into that. I think writing, I'm defensive of it. I'm protective of it. I'm protective of other writers because I feel like there's nothing like a living, breathing, human, soul having person. There we write in a different way that a robot just never can, and I'll always
Absolutely.
think that. So awesome. So, Freelance Fam, I'm going to read to you a little bit from Jessica's bio so you can get to know her more. Jessica Walrack is a freelance writer and journalist and the founder of All Things Freelance Writing. She covers personal finance topics for many leading national outlets, including CBS News, U.S. News and World, USA Today, and Investopedia. All Things Freelance Writing is her passion project. It's a community and brand that she founded in 2022 to help writers build their ideal businesses. She offers social groups, a weekly jobs email and job board, a blog, a podcast, and a vetted directory of writers, and much more. So definitely check her out. Jessica, thank you again. I'm so excited to talk with you. So, how did you first get into this freelance world?
Yeah, so it all started about 10 and a half years ago. And my husband and I were both working out in traditional style jobs. Um, our son was 5 at the time, and he was in daycare or with grandparents or babysitters. And we just kind of reached a point where we were like, we're not really happy. We're not really seeing each other very often. Both of our jobs were very demanding. We'd work nights, weekends, sometimes holidays. Retail life is crazy. um, but yeah, we got to a point where we're like, we need to do something. Like, what could we do? And so we started talking about different ideas of how to work online, and ended up deciding, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to try to start this online business together and shift our life so that we can spend more time together. And through that process, we had to hire copywriters for our website and for different communications for our blog. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I ended up going on to Elance, which is now Upwork, and looking around, applying for jobs. I got a few, and it started gaining traction. And I actually ended up pivoting to that. And here I am 10 years later.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness. I love that. And especially, I mean, if you know Elance, then yeah, you've been in the game for a bit.
Yeah.
Because that's one of like the first, I feel like it was Elance was, yeah, it was like one of the first ones way before some of the more sophisticated, marketplaces that we see now. So,
Yeah. It was
I-
Elance and Odesk were the big ones at the
Odesk.
time.
Odesk. And was Odesk the one that would watch you? I feel like
Yeah.
some of them had components where they would watch you create so that you could toggle up the time or well, toggle is a source for time tracking, but yeah, it would like time track for you, I think.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah, that always weirded me out. It was like, that's so much. It feels like you're on stage writing, like in
Yeah. I
every
can't do
place.
that. I'd be like, if you need that, you can find somebody else.
Right. Yeah. I just can't work that way. That's
No, me
so
neither.
interesting. And so you mentioned the retail sales, and I'm thinking immediately when we're talking about that, like the holidays and Black Friday and just these times where, yeah, I could imagine you wanted to be home with your husband and your little son at the time, and just how that retail background, how that impacted your work now. How did this background in selling directly to consumers and then later in B2B affect the way that you write content?
Yeah. So, it's kind of funny when you look back in hindsight and you see your path and how things kind of like built on each other to help. And that was definitely the case with that past career. So, although it did lead me to a point where I was like, I got to get out of this, I am thankful for it for the lessons that I learned. And so, one of them I would say was the sales fundamentals. The company I worked for was T-Mobile. And I started as a part-time sales rep, and then I built my way up to being a store manager. And they really invest in, or they did at the time, in employees and their development. And so they sent me to different sales trainings where you're really like role playing and learning the different steps of the sales process. And then I was on the sales floor almost every day, greeting customers and had to hit a quota. And so just having all of that experience, I felt when I started writing, it's still sales. Everything I was doing is copy and content for companies, helping them to move their customers through a funnel. So I'm like, okay, I already know all of the basic steps that I'm going through, but instead of talking it through in a conversation, it's coming through these assets. So that was hugely helpful. And then on the B2B side, that's a whole different game. But I think the biggest, most important lesson I learned there was just about the 3% rule, which is I would get lists of companies to call. So I would sit in the office and just call, trying to see if they wanted to switch over to T-Mobile, with their whole business plan. And at first, it's really hard and demoralizing because you just get no, we're not interested, or they hang up, or people don't want to hear anybody just calling them out of the blue for the most part. But what I learned was about 3% of every 100 people that you call are going to say yes or be interested.
Mm.
It's just a principle that occurs out there in cold pitching, not just at T-Mobile, but across the board. So that kind of gave me hope. It was like, I'm not just getting no's. Every no is moving me closer to a yes. And that proved true again and again. And so when I was starting my freelance writing business, I had to put in tons of pitches, reach out to companies, but I knew that it wasn't um, hopeless if everyone was telling me no.
Yeah.
So I would get no's and no's, and I'd be like, I just got to keep going until I start getting those yeses. And sure enough, that was the case once again.
That is so cool. I'm thinking about, a lot of freelancers, and I know you work with a lot of freelancers too. It feels like a lot of us get nervous when it comes to asking for the sale. We love talking about the strategy and the story, but then when it's time to actually like ask for the business, talk about invoicing, talk about cost, and I don't know if it's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a function of writers sometimes not being respected or valued. People think what we do is easy, but I love that you're bringing that experience to this world because that's what you did. You literally called people who weren't really expecting your call and you're asking for their business. And I'm in being able to develop that thick skin and that comfort with rejection because you need that in our world. That's so
You absolutely do.
interesting.
And just to not take it personal. It's easy to just
Yeah.
feel like something's wrong with me, or I'm not meant for this, or, I think that's very common to feel that way. But just to realize, no, you just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think you can definitely improve those odds as you start to identify your ideal customer and you start to build your brand and all those things. Those numbers go up and you don't deal with rejection as much. But in the beginning, it's so normal. And I have so many writers that reach out to me like, I don't know what to do. This isn't
Yeah.
working. Feeling all that self-doubt. And I'm just like, you got to keep going. Like I sent 40 applications before someone gave me my first shot. 40.
Wow.
So I just try to put that into perspective.
That's so cool. I love that. That's so inspiring. It really is a numbers game. And, even now, I feel like there was a lot of chatter in the industry about, what the recession or, this economic downturn that we've been in, what that means for us. And in certain forums, I've seen people talking about that. Are things slowing down? It feels like things are slowing down, and really just having that ability to get back up, to pitch somebody else. That's how we weather these storms. Is just being able to like keep going, and it is a numbers game. That 3% is going to come somehow. That's really cool. So I was checking out your website and I love the tagline that you have: great content, no headaches, because I really think that's what clients want. I think that's what customers want for everything, right? We just want what we need. It could be a product or service, and we want the experience to be easy. Can you tell us more about this? How have you intentionally designed your customer experience to be easy, and how can other freelancers kind of think about those things in their own processes?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying that I definitely did not start out this way. I learned so much just from having things go wrong, and
Mm,
taking notes and then asking myself, how can I prevent this in the future over
right.
and over 10 years? But yeah, I would say after about 7, I really started to dial in, okay, how can I just make this as easy as possible, seamless on both sides? And I would say the very first thing that you should do, is vet your clients. You
Mm,
have to choose carefully who you're going to work with, because it's impossible to deliver a seamless, great experience to somebody who's not organized and can't provide you with what you need as a writer. Because you're just going to find yourself, spinning your wheels, and they're going to be trying to figure out what they want through trial and error with you, which is not a fun place to be as the writer, trying to guess. And then they're like, oh, actually, I figured out that I want this. And
oh my
I mean,
goodness.
if you're going to be paid as a strategist or something, then that can make sense. But when you're just supposed to be delivering the deliverable of writing, it's much better when they are all organized. They know exactly what they want. So I think that's one of the keys is, interviewing clients, making sure that they need what you offer, what's in your expertise, and that they're organized and ready to be a great partner. Um, and then once that's set, I think it's, carefully reviewing all of the details of the project, planning a deadline that's reasonable, that you're not going to feel rushed. We're going to have enough space and time to give it your best. Um, and things do go wrong sometimes. I try to meet all my deadlines or beat them, but life's crazy sometimes. But I think it's also important just to let the client know as soon as possible if you need an extension. And most of the time, they'll be understanding. Um, and then doing the best you can to double check everything that you have to make sure everything meets all the requirements. Um, Asking for feedback, so even though I specialize in one service and I've been doing it 5 days a week for 3 years, so I have it pretty dialed in, but I'm still going to turn it in and say, tell me all the feedback you have. We
Mm,
have 2 revision rounds we can go through. So gather all your thoughts. Let's talk about it. I'm totally open, and I try to get aligned as close as I can to exactly what they need. Um, and then I just ensure that they're happy. And throughout the whole process, I want to be proactive, positive, professional, friendly. Never want to leave emails kind of like sitting around for more than a day or 2 business days. Um, Not over talking to them or telling them too much because they're busy, but also not being short. So there's just kind of like this balance that I find.
I love that. I love the first part about interviewing the clients, that it starts from, a healthy partnership, that you can only have a healthy journey if you've got two people who are ready, for this interaction.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and that's so empowering, I think, for us as business owners, because a lot of times, again, when you're in a field like ours, that again, some people aren't, they don't value it, or they think, oh, I'll just hire somebody from, another country because the exchange rate is better, or I'll just use a robot. They don't always come to us understand, like it's very much of, you should be happy that I'm just giving you business. And I feel like, no, that's not we are service providers. We are business owners. We have expertise that's hard won from years and years and years of practice and investment and courses and certificates and college or whatever. So I think having that respect for ourselves and our businesses in finding and knowing that you don't have to accept every client that reaches out, and that we're not in
Mhm.
a place of, oh, I'm a starving writer, I'm a starving artist, and I just need to accept anybody with a pulse and a dollar. And
Mhm.
no, because when we get to those, when the business relationship starts in that way, I think it's just a recipe for
It
disaster. So
is.
I love that was your first point. I think that's really,
Yeah.
really.
And what you're saying right there, I mean, I think that's one of the most important things for freelance writers to
Mhm.
understand. And it was the biggest shift in my business. Um, it's just, that switch in mindset from surviving to thriving, from being like an employee mindset to being a business owner.
Absolutely.
And it's not just when you get on a discovery call, I think it's easy to be like really nervous. Like, what are they going to ask me? Am I good enough? But switching that to, are they good enough? Are they the right fit? Are they, my ideal client? I think is huge. Like we should be interviewing them and asking them questions about their systems, about their strategy, about all of these things to make sure that they're ready. Both sides have to be on the same page.
I love that. And I think that's true. If they have a fundamental business issue, an operations issue, a customer service issue, or the person who's answering their phone is not friendly or doesn't follow through on tasks, then we can write the most glowing copy on their website. We can write the most beautiful press release, but the customers are not going to stay, or they're not going to have those conversions or that retention that they might be looking for. And they may be looking at us as the writers, like in terms of, did the copy that we generate, did it achieve what they're looking for? But again, if they have glaring issues, we can't, we're not fairy godmothers that we could just solve all the problems, right?
Right.
I
The
love it.
strategy definitely has to be in place.
Yeah, I think so. And so part of this, some of the stuff that we're talking, I mean, I think that you cover, you help other writers with through all things freelance writing. I love that you have this online community. And can you tell us more about what you have to offer writers just like us, maybe ones that are even just starting out and are brand new to this world?
Yeah. Um, So, as I've kind of talked about a little bit, freelance writing has had a profound impact on my quality of life. Now that my son's 15, he's kind of about to drive, he's going off in his own world, about to be an adult. And I look back and I'm like, thank goodness that I made that change at age 5. And we got to spend at least, 10 years together making all of these incredible memories. Like, I can't even hardly express how thankful I am for that experience. And so when I see other people who are struggling in that sense, maybe they're not able to, spend the time with their kids, or they're tired running them to daycare all the time, kind of the place I was in before. Um, I just felt a strong need to want to help more how I can, just based on my journey. And I know a lot of other freelance writers in the industry who have had similar experiences. And, they've had a different journey and different lessons along the way that are also valuable and that are helpful for up and coming writers to know. So, all things freelance writing really tries to bring together the voices of experienced writers in one place, through our blog and podcasts and social channels on an ongoing basis, just so you can go there and find answers and they're not like token answers you're going to find just by searching the web. It's real people who have been through experiences and they're sharing the steps they took, what actually worked, what didn't work. Um, and Aside from that, we also have the jobs email, which goes out every Friday, which one of the hardest things when getting started is just finding the work. Like I said before, you're putting all the pitches in. And so the job board just we search the internet each week on different social media platforms online to find people who are looking for writers. And we put it all together in a list. So you can go through and see, it's not a cold pitch. They're asking for writers. So you already have a better chance and you're sending a pitch based on what they're asking for. So that's been growing and we've been focusing on making sure that goes out each week. And then we've also started this new branch where we help businesses to find writers that are going to give them a great service experience with no headaches and all that. So writers can apply to join our vetted directory, and we have a list of requirements like 2 years of experience, samples that are error-free and show expertise and online brand, those sort of things. And then once writers are approved, they get into this list that's open. Anyone can see it. And then business owners can also come to us if they need a writer, and we'll match them with 3 writers from our directory. So we're kind of helping business owners, and then we also want to help writers in another way to find work. So that's our current things that we've been working on lately.
That is awesome. I really, really love that. I especially like that piece for the businesses because a lot of times, and I've hired freelance, I've been a freelance writer, but I've also hired freelance writers. And sometimes, it's been hard. And I don't know if
It's
you've experienced
hard.
that too, right?
Oh my
There was
gosh.
another podcast that I heard, and somebody was talking about, they were giving advice, to kind of talking shop like us. And they were sharing, just meet your deadline, or like, it was very basic things, like in terms of best practices. And I thought, it's sad that we have to say that, but it is, we need to say it because there's a lot of freelancers who are just, they're not really communicating, they're not really turning stuff in. So the fact that you offer that for business owners to save them time and to get them someone really competent, that's super valuable. I really like
Yeah.
that.
And that ties back into what we were talking about earlier with the great content, no headaches. A lot
Yeah.
that idea of that tagline came after I tried to hire writers. And it's amazing how much can go wrong. And just doing those simple things right is actually rare. And it is actually going to set you apart in the industry. And I hear that feedback from clients too all the time. Like they're so excited and happy that you delivered and they don't have to edit it. It's like that. So rare. And it's like, really? Like it's kind of surprising to hear that. But then once you kind of have been on the other side, you're like, oh yeah. And if you get a piece of content that's bad, I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you can spend way more time fixing it than
Oh
it would
my
have
God.
taken you just to start fresh from the beginning. So it can be a huge tax on your business, your time, your energy, your stress. To have a good writer you can trust is just like gold.
It really, really is. Finding somebody who also just, does their homework, kind of researches the business, kind of sees what the goal is, puts the clients first, and kind of understanding I might not be writing for the client, I'm writing for the client's customers, and understanding like the target audience and what we're really trying to achieve here. Those
Yeah,
skills, it's not super academically challenging, but I think if you can nail those and listen well, be a good listener and do what you say you're going to do and follow up, I think you have a bright future ahead in freelance.
couldn't
That's,
agree more.
I love that. Super cool. And so you mentioned this a little bit that you are really grateful to freelance, to making that decision so many years ago, 10 and a half years ago now, because it gave you that flexibility and more time with your son. And I find that that's a common thread with a lot of our listeners too. A lot of them tend to be women, and even if they don't have their own children, they're caregivers in some way. So maybe they're caring for an elderly parent or a loved one, or maybe they're a caretaker to a niece or nephew. And you have actually done freelance you've been able to have more time with your family. And I know that you've lived abroad. I think you lived in Costa Rica, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
That's super cool. Can you share some more about how freelance has allowed you to balance your family life and even work from another country?
Yeah. So once we got the online business kind of going and all of that, we're like, my husband and I had always loved to travel. And so we just had this dream of heading out and seeing what was going on in the world. Um, and so, yeah, once that was a possibility, we were like, let's do it, you know? And we were pretty established. We'd been working for 6 to 7 years. We had our house and our cars and that whole deal set up, you know? So it was a total switch, like a
Wow.
hardcore turn, crossroads. We sold everything and we left with just some bags. I think we had a whole suitcase full of Legos.
Gotta have them, the
Had
essentials.
gotta have the toys, books. We had our laptops. Um, and yeah, we moved to Costa Rica and we decided to do kind of a slow travel thing. So we stayed there in the first city for a year, and then we moved to down to the beach for a year.
Mm,
Um, and really, the first year we moved there was just like decompressing from our stressful life.
wow.
We were kind of
Yeah.
out on the side of the Central Valley of Costa Rica, which is a very lush, lots of jungle, very
Mm.
peaceful. And we just were kind of like, okay, we can relax and just, spend time together. And then after about a year, we're like, okay, let's do something fun. So we moved to the beach for a year and learned how to surf, which I'd always dreamed of doing.
Wow.
And we all did that together. And then after that, we're like, well, we're happy here, but we set out to travel. We want to see more of the world. And so we were like, we got to go. And so we did a year of Europe. So we did 1 month I think ended up doing 10 different countries.
Oh my
So that was
gosh.
really, really cool. I mean, it was just a dream. It didn't even
Yeah.
feel real almost. Even looking back, I'm like, I can't believe we did all that. That was so
Wow.
crazy. But it's all just thanks once you have this location independent online income, the possibilities open up and it's just like, what do you want to do? Which is a cool place to be. So just being able to have a lot of those experiences, I feel really grateful for it. And it's something that drives me to want to help other people who, have dreams that they might not be able to achieve because they're stuck in a job in one place.
That's incredible. And I gotta know more about that. So, so was your son doing homeschool or did you have him enrolled in a school while you and your husband got on the laptops and worked?
We did a mix. So
Okay.
wherever we went, we kind of looked at the options and decided what we thought would be the best for him at that time.
Wow.
So when we first moved to Costa Rica, we actually had this little preschool down the street from our house we could walk to. And the whole neighborhood of kids there went to that school. And so we ended up enrolling him there. And they're, out there digging with shovels. It was a very kind of cool age for him to go into it because it's not so much structured academia yet. They're just
Yeah.
learning all the basics anyway. So he was getting to learn it with them. And so he learned Spanish more than us. He's
Awesome.
fluent now,
That is
where
so
ours was still a
cool.
little bit, choppy. And then in Tamarindo, the beach town in Costa Rica, there was a really awesome international school. There's actually quite a few of them there that we could choose from. So that was half English, half Spanish, which was perfect. So he did that through second grade. And then Europe, we did online school slash kind of world schooling, where we were incorporating museums and history and art and all that stuff into our lesson plans as we went, which was so much fun, so cool.
That is
um, I
amazing.
really enjoyed that. And then after that, we moved to the Riviera Maya in Mexico.
Oh my gosh.
So we're
My
kind of in the
dream.
Tulum area. And then we
Yeah.
went to Cozumel. And
Wow.
there's a lot of expats there. So we met a community of people with kids. And we were in kind of like a homeschool co-op the first year. And then we fell in love with Cozumel. We ended up staying there for 3 years. And there was a good international school there, which was half Spanish, half English. So he
Wow.
went there for 3 years before we decided to move back. So
Oh
yeah, it was a
my
mix.
goodness. So how old was he? So he was around 5, I guess, when you started this journey. And then
Hmm.
so when he got back, what grade was he in when
Into seventh.
into
Yeah.
7.
So we wanted him here for
Wow.
junior high and high school.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
And that
sense.
was during COVID. So that was kind of a hard re-entry
Oh,
because it
wow.
was like online school and nobody could go and meet people and stuff. So that was kind of a tough phase, but luckily all that's kind of passed.
I think you should write a book just about that. Like, just about that for people like me who are freelance, who have kids, who, want to do that, but maybe don't know how to balance the, like, I think I would want to party all the time. I don't know if I would have the discipline to like get out and like start writing, like if the beach and, the
Okay. And
waves.
that's a fair point because I would say my business was just kind of surviving while I was doing
Mm,
that. I was
yeah.
experiencing life. I was like focused on that. It was very exciting. And so it wasn't really until we came back to the States in 2020 that I would say my business really, I fine-tuned it. I started all things freelance writing. You'll see a lot more
Yeah.
excitement in my business after that point.
Yeah, with good reason. I mean, you were living, and I love that. And I think that's the dream, right? You hear people who have lived in other places talk about just this hustle culture we have here in the States and just how that's just so different than the way the world approaches work. So I think that's so cool that you have that you guys did that for yourselves, for your family, and for your son. So from an early age, he got to see, yeah, there's more than one way to approach work and education and learning.
Everything
And
about life.
yeah, everything, just the whole philosophy. Like, I
Yes.
love that. We honeymooned in Costa Rica, and it's so funny that
Oh,
you live
cool.
there because I always told my husband, I was like, that's where I want to retire
Me
one
too.
day. It's just, oh gosh, it's so
What
beautiful.
part did you go to?
We went to Flamingo Beach. We went to Tortuguero, which I guess is in the northeast. I can't remember. By the Caribbean, we went to
Okay.
Arenal, the volcano area.
Yeah,
We
I
went
love that area.
to, yeah, I feel like we went to a couple where the turtles were at, middle, and then we went to the beach. We went on the coast right by it's between the border of Costa Rica and, is it Nicaragua that's under?
Uh-huh.
Now I'm forgetting, but I
No,
remember it was
Panama's under Nicaragua's.
Panama. It was Panama.
Yeah.
Was it Limon? Does that sound
Yeah,
familiar?
yeah, on the Caribbean side.
Yes. So we went there. I was like, man, this is the type of lifestyle I was meant to live because it was just
Yes.
so chill and slow and, that
And
island.
everything's so lush and
Oh my
amazing.
gosh.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. That is so cool that you did that. Do you think that you'll take your business abroad again later?
Mhm.
Do you have
Yeah.
plans for that? Or
We're here. Well, my son is doing high school and
yeah.
getting his roots and figuring out what he wants to do, but I
Yeah.
definitely am itching.
That's so cool,
And Costa
Jessica.
Rica is my favorite, so
Yeah.
I can't see not going back.
Oh, that's so cool. Very cool. That just sounds like hashtag goals, like the kids say. I love that.
Yes.
Very cool. That's so neat. So we've had a lot of trends in writing as of late in the last year, I would say. I feel like the beginning of this year, you couldn't open an email or attend a conference or log onto a webinar in this world without somebody talking about ChatGPT and how it was going to tank our industry and just we were all going to be retired, by
Uh-huh.
force. Was your
Um,
business impacted by this for better or for worse, or did it not even make a blip on your side?
um, yeah, it was quite a shock. I definitely was shocked by how far it came in such a big leap. Like it
Yeah.
was so bad. And then all of a sudden it was, coherent, which
Yeah.
was pretty surprising for me. And I feel like at the start of the year, between that and all of the threats of a recession, the crazy
Mm,
inflation, a lot
hmm.
of businesses were just kind of like scared and they
Yeah.
were holding off on launching their content plans and hiring. There was just kind of like this pause, I felt like, for a month or two.
Right.
And a lot of the other freelancers in the community were kind of saying the same thing, like, where's the work? What's going on? That sort of
Yeah.
thing. Um, but now, looking back and looking at the whole thing, it hasn't really impacted my business very much. Most of my clients say that it is not allowed.
Yeah.
You cannot take content from ChatGPT and use it, copy and paste it, and use it as your writing. If they find out that you are, they're going to be done with you. They don't
Mhm.
want it. And so I agree. I've I tried. I have a few websites of my own, and I've experimented with it, just to see, and I find that it takes me longer. Just like if you get a piece of writing from a bad writer,
Yes.
it takes me longer to fix what Chat GPT spits out than it would for me to start fresh, because not only is it generic, boring, repetitive, um, but you can't trust it. You have to go back and check every single line to make sure if it's accurate. So I'd rather start with a clean slate, say what I mean, and make sure that every single thing is true along the way, than go back and try to piece this thing back together. But perhaps if you're not a writer, that might be a good way to start, just to kind of figure out what to do. But I have to say, I'll give credit where credit is due. I do think that it is a cool tool that can be useful for certain things. Like, I like to use it to brainstorm titles for blogs, meta description ideas, and sometimes I'll take my piece and paste it in there and ask it for feedback. And it analyzes it and it will tell you areas where you might want to add more or less or things like that. So I do find it helpful, but I don't think that it's a replacement for an experienced writer.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for saying that. Every time I hear that, it makes me feel better. I think it makes everybody feel better in our world, right? I find the same thing. I think it's so funny now because now can recognize it. Like there's a couple
Oh yeah.
telltale signs, right? Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
notice the word delve is used. Let's delve or let's dive into or unlock,
Yes.
unleash, unveil. And I use it. I use it more, well, sometimes with the podcast. Like I'll use otter.ai for transcription to help me with show notes. So sometimes I'll use it for things like that, like help me come up with a summary or some key points or my YouTube descriptions or, things like that where I'm using it as I'm giving it fresh original content and I'm asking it to help me repackage it.
Yeah.
But what you're saying about, because I've experimented with it, like a blog, write me a blog about XYZ. And you're right. It's atrocious. It's horrible. It's frustrating. I don't know. I think that
Yeah.
it's definitely, it has its place as an assistant. But it's not a replacement for a thinking person who can write about current things or like you said factual things, and I'm sure especially in your world in finance that's
Yeah.
heavily regulated, you've got to be correct, you've got to be on your p's and q's, you can't be just you know roboting
Yeah.
it.
Most articles that I have to submit or that I submit have to have a comment bubble on almost every sentence with a source to an authority that proves what
Right.
I'm saying is true. Like there's just no
Yes.
way. There's
It's
no.
so interesting. I was talking to my best friend, she's an attorney, and she sent me an article, and it was about this attorney. He used it, I guess, for his points to make in court. And so he used it for his points, but all of the cases that I guess ChatGPT cited were all made up cases. Like they made up whole case law to use as precedent in this guy's remarks or his whatever he was justifying. And the
And
judge,
he used it?
yeah, he used it.
Oh my
The judge found
gosh.
out. He got in serious trouble. He got thrown out. Of course, he lost the case. And so some of it's like, humorous, like the applications, like how people are using it, how much they're trusting it for some of these things. I did use it to write a snarky email to my kids' aftercare program for a bullying incident. But yeah, I would never, if you're being paid to write, you know, I don't think there's any comparison between a
Yeah,
writer that knows their stuff and ChatGPT. So
same.
that's
And I
funny.
have to, I request a lot of quotes from professionals that I can include in
Yeah.
my articles. And so now a lot of people are using ChatGPT to create the responses. And they're sending me
Mm,
these, and it's so obvious when you're looking through the results, what's human and what's not.
right.
Just the specifics, like humans, it's not that predictable what we actually say, how we
Right.
talk. You might, it's actually more unique than you might think, but
Yeah.
you don't realize it until it's next to this generic thing that
Yeah.
everybody's using that sounds the same. But yeah.
It's funny. It's funny where everything's like exciting news with like tons of emojis, and I'm like, nobody really uses this many emojis. So there's a couple ways to tell. It's kind of funny. I mean, I think it because it's based on machine learning, it will be interesting to see, how it advances and how smart it gets, and um, again, all the applications. But I think for right now, I think we're good, and I think we just need to keep leaning into what we do well, and even getting better in our craft, making our customer journey or customer experience more pleasant, more seamless, more services, more value add. And
Yeah.
we'll be good. I think we'll be good there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So every freelancer that I know wants to find their ideal clients, like you said, and that ideal piece is key, not just any client, the ideal ones. Can you share some a business development or client attraction tip that maybe our listeners haven't heard before or they haven't thought of before?
If you want to find clients that, pay well and have the budgets to afford your rates, it's important that they are profitable and growing and that they have a lot of money. Because if they don't, they're not going to have the money to spend, no matter, how nice they are, how great they are to work with, they're not going
Right.
to have the budget. And so that was one important thing I learned. I was trying to raise my rates and everyone just kept saying, no, no, no.
Mm,
And then I realized, like, who am I talking to? What kind of companies am I talking to? What companies don't give me those objections? And after reviewing it, it's like, okay, certain industries, are going to have higher budgets, and then certain companies within them are. So I think it's important to think about it through that lens. And you can look on places like Crunchbase to see companies' revenues and their trends. Um, you can just look for the companies that are at the top of Google and are at the top of the niches that you're working in. And then one thing I've been hearing from a lot of writers lately is to follow the news updates for the companies that are receiving funding from angel investors and VCs and those things,
mm.
because they're pumping millions into these companies and then they need to launch their marketing strategies. So if you see a company that comes up, they just got funded and they're in line with, what you want to do, that can be a good company to add to your pitch list.
I love that. Very, very cool. That makes sense. Go where the money's at. I feel like early in my freelance career, I would hang out around these startup pitch contests and these startup boot camps, and because I love entrepreneurship. But the problem was everybody there was just starting out. And so everybody wanted web copy, or they wanted help with their sales collateral or their pitch decks, or whatever, but they were broke. They were the ones trying to get the angel investment or the VC funding. And so I think what you're sharing about finding customers that are, that are established, or that just have the money, that are maybe not brand new, maybe have been,
Yeah.
or if they are new, maybe that they have that funding and that backing, so that they're from a strong financial position to be able to invest in our services. So
Yeah.
important.
And also, like we were talking about earlier, they have the strategy in place. Because
Mm.
again, even if they have all the money, but they don't have the strategy, you can end up in a super frustrating situation where you just can't get anything right because they don't know what they want. So I
Absolutely.
would just look for somebody who, I mean, has, really detailed assignment briefs, really
Hmm.
detailed style guides, really detailed descriptions of their target customers. All of those things are really good signs that they've put in the work to figure out who they are, who they're talking to, and what assets they need to create to reach their audience.
I love that. And I think there's such an opportunity there because there's so many people, so many companies that don't have that. And even for us, with ChatGPT and, just looking at other things, I think that's an opportunity for even freelance writers who are listening, who maybe have done market research, you've probably already done half the things that go into like a brand strategy guide where we're studying the target market, looking at competitors, talking about unique selling proposition, all the stuff that we need as the copywriters to create. If they don't have that, that's something, that's another way, another service that you might even
Yeah,
want to get into, because
absolutely.
a lot of our skills translate well because we're already researching. We're already looking at their competitors to see how they speak about themselves, their voice, their tone, how they're positioned in the market. So I think that might be an area of opportunity because too many customers don't have what you're saying. Like they don't
Yeah,
have a brand guide or a style guide, So we could help them with that perhaps for an
absolutely.
additional fee,
Yeah.
right? That's a
And
separate
it's a
service.
sizable amount. I mean, I would say that's the bulk of the where the investment goes is into
Yeah.
that strategy piece. So that can be a super profitable way if you want to expand your
Yeah.
offerings. But then you also have to realize that if you're in charge of the strategy, you're responsible for the results. So you got to be tracking and you got
Mm-hmm.
to be cued into, what's working, what's not, adapt as you go, and that whole piece.
Super cool. Very true. You've been doing this a long time. I mean, 10 and a half years, that is a long. You've seen a
Time
lot.
flies. It really
You,
does.
you've weathered a lot. What have been the most important lessons that you've learned as a professional writer?
Yeah, I think what really stands out to me is the clarity piece. Um, I think when most of us start, it's like you're just excited to get a yes after applying to 40 jobs. It's like, yay,
Yeah.
I can make money online. Like that first initial step is exciting. And then once you have a bunch of clients, it's like exciting to have this whole base and all this stuff going on. Um, but I think it's important to get to the point where it's like, what do I really want from this business? How much do I really want to make per year? How many hours do I really want to be spending? What do I really want to work on? What kind of
Mm,
people do I want to work with? All of these things start to add up. And a lot of times it's after somebody reaches kind of a burnout point.
yeah.
Unfortunately, that's how it was for me. But I think it can be helpful to do that a little bit earlier. Not necessarily right off the bat, though, because that can kind of be limiting, I find. But once you have your feet wet, you have some things going on, I think it's important to say, okay, what do I want? And then set the boundaries around what you want. And then you got to have that backbone to stand by them because people are going to be trying to cross those boundaries all the time.
Oh my goodness, ain't that the truth? I think that's the hardest part. That the
Yeah.
enforcing part, right? It's easy to say this is how I want to be treated or this is how I want to, how I want to conduct business. But it's a whole different ball game to actually put it in practice and redirect people kindly but firmly,
Yep.
when they start to violate a little bit. That's hard, especially when you're a service-based business where we're not really selling widgets, we're selling these services. So, we want the customers to be happy, but we also have to, it's definitely a balance to protect ourselves so that we don't burn out, but to keep them, happy and satisfied. So,
Yeah. And I think you learn a lot of things as you go. Like I said earlier,
yeah.
you just learn and then you put that in your contract. You learn, you put that in your
Right.
contract. And then I find that clients actually appreciate it, at least the right ones. Once they say,
Yeah.
okay, we have 2 revision rounds. So it's like, you can't just keep sending me all these different things from different people. You need to get together, figure
Mm-hmm.
out what you want changed, think about it, and then submit it in one to get the most out of your kind of revision process. And I'm not
Yes.
saying that I'm still like everything's always perfect and I never let anyone cross a line or something like that. Like it's a challenge still, I still like I'll have a gut feeling like this probably isn't right, but maybe it's okay. And then sure enough, I should have said no, that sort of thing.
Always.
It's a
Always.
constant testing, but I think over the years I've definitely gotten stronger and stronger and kind of better at listening to my gut and sticking to that.
I love it. That intuition, man, it's a gift. So you've done so much from working for clients as a single provider. You have built this beautiful community for other freelance writers. What's next for you? What's your big dream? Where do you plan to take your business now?
Yeah, I love that question. My biggest focus right now is all things freelance writing. I mean, I'm
Awesome.
just putting so much of my thoughts and energy into that project. I want it to grow. I want it to reach more writers. I want it to help and become a really, well-known resource for the community where they know they can go to find an answer or a regular source of leads, and eventually where they can go to, find clients and where businesses can also go to know that there's some reliable writers there. So it takes a lot to kind of get something out into the world and going, and that's really my primary focus for the next year.
That's super cool. I'm excited for you, and I think I'm excited for our, freelance community because I think we need more of that. We need all of that. When you think about the nature of what we do, we're literally just staring at our machine. It's very solitary for a lot of us, and you need that community even more because we don't have a water cooler in our house, a lot of us where we can go and chit chat about shop. So it's great that you're creating these spaces for people to convene and to learn and to even get business. So that's super
Yeah,
cool.
thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, I operated by myself for a long time, mostly all while I was traveling, and then joined LinkedIn. Well, I was already on LinkedIn, but I started becoming more active on it
Yeah.
in 2020, and met so many other writers and just started talking shop, comparing notes. And it helped so much for me just to figure out what was possible, just to hear like how other people handle situations, how they're charging. It helped me to build the business that I have today, and to build my ideal business where I actually was happy and not feeling kind of like in survival mode. So, yeah, I personally experienced just that shift of how powerful it can be to be in a community. So, hopefully, the one that I've created also will help writers to get to that next step.
I love it. I think so. That's super cool. Do you have like a hack or a tip, resource, an app, or something that's really helping you lately that we need to know about?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and something has kind of been helping me lately. Um, So right now in the industry, it's pretty crazy in some aspects. There's a lot of layoffs going on to people who are employed at these like massive tech companies and
Mm-hmm.
media outlets and all of that stuff. So people are moving around. Some editors are kind of taking preemptive action and moving around because they don't want to get laid off. So it's kind of this a lot of movement right now. And so I've seen that with some of my clients. And so one thing I would say is it's so important to build strong relationships with your contacts at companies, but don't just have one point of contact. Whenever you can, you want to have a few on the team. So if one person leaves, you don't lose that client and all of the trust that you gain. I mean, it takes a while to get in alignment and for someone to trust you and be like, okay, I can just send this to them. They're going to get it back to me. We don't have to go through all these revisions. It's powerful for them and for you. So you want to have those relationships, multiple at each company. And then when the people leave, they're most often going to other publications, where they might possibly reach out to you again, where you can.
People forget about that. It's you want to dig that well before you are thirsty. You want to build that relationship before you need it and you lose a client and you're like scrambling to find another one. Um, and I think it speaks to the power of social media, but that social piece too is essential. That it's we are not robots, so we cannot just pop up and be transactional. When we need something, we really need to connect with other human beings and care and be, care about them and be a good person. I think that pays a lot of dividends, just
Yeah.
kind of being decent.
Yeah. And
So,
just like what we talked about before, doing those basic things. You show up, you're
yeah.
professional, you're friendly, you get your work done, you reply, you're responsive.
Yep.
They can trust you, all of those things, make sure that those are apparent. And those people are going to want to hold on to you wherever you go,
Yeah.
wherever they
It's
go.
it's true because like we were talking about before, it's hard to find good people. And I think sometimes we forget that or maybe we don't put a lot of emphasis on that. We don't maybe take those aspects for granted, but those things cannot be taught. There's not a LinkedIn certificate for like just using some social skills and, like you said, responding when there's a question or doing what you say you're going to do. So that's super, super powerful. And those are essential reminders that we can really catapult ourselves to the upper echelons of writers or, whatever we're selling, really, by just having kind of those basics mastered.
Yeah, it's not some rocket science crazy,
Right.
which I think is kind of a relief, but
Yeah,
simplicity is difficult sometimes.
it is. It is. Sometimes it's hard to just kind of come back to level one and the basics. So
Hmm.
I love this conversation, Jessica. Thank you so much for
Too.
carving time out for us. I know people are going to want to learn more about your work and about your community. Where can people find you online?
Yeah. So for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn and I post a couple times a week on there. So I always love to connect with other writers and see them in the feed, and my DMs are always open on that front. And then for all things freelance writing, I think the best thing to do is to subscribe to the jobs email. We currently have like 1,600 writers that are subscribing for
Wow.
the weekly email, which is amazing. And yeah, it goes out every Friday at 8 a.m. sharp. In there, we share the job opportunities along with resources, tips, and all the latest things going on with all things freelance writing. So that's probably the best spot.
Fantastic. It sounds like a wonderful way to spend your Friday looking, planning the week ahead. That's really smart strategically. I love it. Jessica, thank you so much again for being on our show. We really appreciate it.